Hey, Gaddies, we are back today with our favorite Gadvocate. Hey, Tom.
Hey, how are you?
We're good. Okay, so a couple months ago, we started talking about special education and specifically rights for parents and how to advocate for your child. It's sort of an alphabet soup in that space, and we wanted to take time today to unpack that a little bit. So let's start with the basics because we talked a lot about an IEP. Could you tell us what an IEP is?
Right. Well, we are on the verge of spooky season, as you can see behind me here, but your IEP and all the other services that are related to your child's education do not have to be scary. So that's why I'm here to help out with that. But what is an IEP? An IEP is an individualized education program, and it is specific to your child and specific to the needs that your child presents, whether it is a health issue, maybe a cognitive issue, a behavioral issue. There's a whole host of reasons why a child may have. I guess I should say a student, because an IEP can go from pre-kindergarten and can follow you all the way to college. Anybody who's in school could have an IEP.
Okay. And it sounds like it's something that gives your kiddo specific goals and specialized instruction. So how does this take place?
Well, we only have about 10 minutes, but it is a process and it involves a team. The teacher, the principal, the teacher consultant, the person that is working with the special ed supervisor to offer these services. Of course, the parent or parents. Sometimes it may be a case manager, the school social worker. If there's a language issue, it may be the speech therapist. If it's a health issue, like a kid may need a feeding tube or special medical care, the nurse may be there. If the kid is older and is involved in the juvenile justice system, the parole officer may be there. So it's kind of an everybody in the pool invitation. Anybody who's working with the child or the student is invited and encouraged to get their input as to what's going to best work for this young person.
And one of the things you mentioned earlier was a FAPE. What is FAPE?
FAPE, which is a free, appropriate public education. Very little is written in our Constitution about what is required for students, but free appropriate public education is due every child. So if the school misses out somehow, if they maybe remove the student for some reason, then they can ask for FAPE, which kind of steps in and offers alternatives while maybe the student is being suspended, possibly rethinking placement. It's just making sure that their education is going to continue.
And can a parent request an IEP?
Yes. Yeah. And that oftentimes can lead to what is called a child find complaint. It is the district's responsibility to find these students who may need special supports. But if the district, for some reason, does not say, little whoever needs to be evaluated, then that's what we call a child find complaint. And that can get the district in trouble. We don't like to go there. We like to make sure that the district is doing their due diligence and making sure that all students are looked at with, the equal lens of, are they going to be gen ed, general ed, in other words, not a special ed student, or are they going to need some kind of help or accommodations?
So what happens when a parent requests an IEP?
Well, it's a long process, and it can take upwards of 60 days. And what will happen is the school will reach out and they will send a consent to evaluate form. There's a lot of dots or T's, and cross your T's and dot your I's when you're doing stuff like this. So the parent will sign a consent so their student can be evaluated. The student will be evaluated on a cognitive level, an educational level, social emotional level. They'll look at previous level of performance. Maybe there's testing or grade cards. They'll look at everything. And there's some metrics that can be used for screening for ASD, or the autism spectrum disorder. There are metrics that can be used for behavioral issues, for an EI designation, which is emotional impairment. There's a variety of different tests that are done. And a lot of times the parents will be given evaluation tools as well to, give some background as to what's going on with the kid.
So that's a lot for parents to keep track of.
Right.
How do we make sure to manage it?
Well, if you have a good team, the team will work with you and walk through all this. It's not the parent's responsibility to do this. The parent can ask for an evaluation, but it is not their responsibility to make sure all this gets done. That's a special ed supervisor, that's the teacher consultant, that's maybe the resource room teacher, all the people working in the district, or the ISD, the intermediate school district, which is what we have here in Michigan, that kind of oversees all the schools in a county. They're going to be the ones that are going to keep track of all that. But as a parent, keep the receipts. I think I mentioned this earlier on. Make copies of your email, put them in a folder somewhere. Pardon me. If there's a phone call, follow up with an email saying, hey, this is what I heard on the phone call. And just have all those receipts available.
What is a BIP?
A BIP is what they will do sometimes before getting into an IEP. If they feel it is
Can I
a
ask that
behavior.
again, and can you define what it is?
No, I'm getting there.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
getting
sorry.
there. BIP is a behavioral intervention plan. And a lot of times that's step one. Can we maybe look at what the child is doing and create a plan that will move them away from the behaviors that are maybe disrupting their education or disrupting the education of the other kids in the class?
What is a 504 plan?
Well, a 504 plan is an accommodation, and it's not necessarily an IEP. I actually have a 504 plan at my work because I am hearing impaired. And my daughter, who is here doing laundry, just waved at me because she had a 504 plan as well. And they're very helpful, for somebody with a hearing impairment, having speakers available, amplification if we have a speaker, turning on closed captioning, stuff like that. But if maybe a student has anxiety and they can't get up in front of the classroom and give a talk on, whatever book they're reading, the teacher can maybe have them record it and send it to the teacher for evaluation, or they could do one-on-one with a teacher instead of doing the full group. And a lot of times the BIP, the 504, these are all things that are interventions that are done sometimes before going to a full IEP.
Okay, so there's a lot of steps in evaluation that happen before the determination. So what if those don't work, the BIP and the FAPE and the other things that we've discussed?
Well, that's up to the parent, once again, to, keep the receipts. If the kid keeps being sent home for behaviors, document that. If they're not being successful in the class because they refuse to get up there and give a book report on Harriet the Spy, I don't know, I'm just grabbing random books out of my head here, then you could say, hey, she's got anxiety. She doesn't want to get up there and talk about it. And now she's got a lower grade. What can we do? The parent can kind of up the pressure and, get them into a evaluation mode.
One thing that I also heard about was a PLAFP. Could you talk about what that is?
PLAP, that is the present level of academic achievement and functional performance. So when we're at an IEP, we're at the PLAF now, and it's like Edith Piaf? No, or Pilaf? What are we doing here? It's a PLAF. And that's where we take a hard look at where the student is right now and what they're doing or not doing, and how the IEP may help get them into the mode of being successful and maybe looking at barriers. Are they having issues in math? Are they having issues in reading? And, is it dyslexia? Is it a dyscalculia, which was a new one for me? I didn't know you could have issues when you look at numbers and stuff like that. I mean, I'm wondering if I need to go back and have myself tested for dyscalculia because I don't know what I'm doing in the math area. So, you kind of look at that and say, all right, where are their strengths? and where they've fallen behind.
Okay, so I'm a parent. I requested an evaluation. We worked through all the steps, and they come back and say, no, my child doesn't need an IEP. What can I do if I don't agree with that decision?
You can request an IEE. It's like do, re, mi, IEE. You can get an IEE, which is an independent educational or education evaluation. And that can be tricky because the district, well, we don't have the people. No, you can get the people. And it is my experience and my understanding that it should not cost the parent anything to do this, for the district to have to redo this again. And if that happens, and once again, they say, man, no, your child isn't eligible, then you backtrack and you say, okay, let's look at a BIP. Let's look at 504 plan to help the student succeed. And then that gets your feet in the ground, your foot in the door, and a 504 and an IEP offer your students some protection. And if it's a behavior issue and a student is removed and suspended, when they get to 10 days, MDR has to take place, a manifestation determination review. And that's for both a 504 and an IEP. So there's two things that happen. There's many things that happen in an MDR, but there's two questions that are asked. One, was it a manifestation of the student's disability? And then two, was it the district's fault for not following their IEP or 504 plan? And this is a good thing, because if we keep sending a kid home for suspension for behaviors and nothing changes, nothing's going to change behavior-wise. So a lot of parents freak out, and with our son, we did as well. Two teachers, you got a kid who's misbehaving, and it's like, oh, crap. But an MDR is a good way to get change made.
All right. Well, Tom, also we have the full sort of written article of all the things that we talk about, and we thank you for sharing your knowledge.
All right. Thank you. I'm always happy to help.
So we are in the second week of school, and my kiddo just came home with a request to do a family tree project. This is a nightmare for ours and a lot of other queer families who were not built or constructed the same way. Do you have thoughts on how to handle this or how to manage it?
Well, first of all, the snaps to the teachers for wanting to, pardon the pun, but I am a dad joke, to branch out and get the kids thinking about, how they're related to people in the world. But the typical family tree form that comes home is not queer family friendly. Our daughter, when she came home, was completely befuddled because it did not allow for her to put her birth mom into the mom, dad. And then she had two dads. It's like, how do we do this, And my husband actually wrote a very, very nicely worded letter to her teacher and said, you really need to rethink doing this. And this isn't just a queer family thing, because not all families come from, just a mom and dad. There may be a stepmom, there may be a stepdad involved. The kids may have come from adoption. They may be in foster care, and that makes it, talk about a trigger. That there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do a family tree. Instead of, maybe you would frame it as like a family house. Who lives in your house? That's a better question. And, what other houses do you go to? Maybe it is going to see your birth mom. Maybe it is going to see, different people that are involved in your life, kids that live with their grandparents because their parents may have lost custody. I am working with a client whose one parent is currently incarcerated and the other one is in rehab. So, and they're living with an aunt. So why are we inflicting this on our kids, I guess? So there's a lot of different ways that teachers can do this. One of the things, I think we talked about this when we were doing the extended school year thing, is social stories. And if you do a quick Google, and maybe you could pop a link in there, how to create a social story. That's a better way to do it, because it's more about the kid and who they relate to, not necessarily who they're related to. Does that make sense? But yeah, teachers need to stop doing that.